The civilian use of drones is booming as more uses are found, from agriculture and TV to leisure, entertainment and real estate. But several incidents have brought into focus the dangers they can pose to the public and the difficulty authorities have in regulating them. Hello, I'm Steve Lyon. This is Between the Lines. Last month, a Lufthansa plane with 108 passengers on board nearly collided with a drone as it approached Warsaw's main airport. The remote-controlled flying machine came within 100 meters of the aircraft, sparking outrage from pilots who demanded the airspace be better policed. It's one of an increasing number of incidents over the use of drones that have caused public outcry. They've been variously armed with handguns, drugs, and even radioactive matter, and they are under fire for being a general nuisance to the community and a possible tool of surveillance that could breach privacy rules. But relative to their proliferation, the malicious use of drones is probably small. In fact, it pales in comparison to their harmless recreational use and their growing commercial application. Regulators are grappling with the best way to manage drones, while technologists ponder the divisive prospects of incorporating artificial intelligence into an unmanned machine. And to discuss the topic of drones, I'm joined by Dr. Fung Xiaohui, Assistant Professor of Engineering Product Development at the Singapore University of Technology and Design, and Chris Armstrong, founder of ArmstrongSkyView, a Singapore company that provides drone filming services, and much more, and we'll come to that as well. Now let's talk first about proliferation. Xiao, how extensive, or sort of give us an idea of the range of these sort of flying devices that are available now?
Sure. You can buy a really small one from the supermarket, and you can actually fly like 5 minutes out of the box, to big crafts like with 8 motors that require maybe a week of technical tweaking to get it up to fly. So there's a whole spectrum of aircrafts we can make.
And all these things are freely available. There's no regulations or stopping anyone from walking into a shop and buying them.
There are operational regulations. I actually have the government format here for what they put out for Singapore, so it's called Flight Safe, and it's essentially the do's and don'ts for what you can do. Whether you need a permit and what are the restrictions on that. Now it's a pretty good basis for Singapore, but there's lots of areas that it doesn't cover. So for instance, just a father and his son flying a toy drone of say 6 inches in size and weighing maybe 100 grams in weight, so it's almost nothing. And the range of that is probably 20 meters, and the flight time's maybe 2 minutes. So you have something which is obviously a toy being called a drone to, as my colleague here was saying, essentially could be used for much greater purposes. So, your science and your search and rescues, but there is a lot of privacy issues with this as well, which we're trying to work on.
And the cost of these flying devices has come down remarkably in recent times. Just give us an idea. I mean, you mentioned these small ones that can fit in the palm of your hand. Is that like $20? Is that like $50?
$50.
Yeah, $50.
You can get a really nice one.
Online, you can find them probably for $20 or something.
So this begs the question, then, with such a wide range and so many different purposes of these flying devices, why do we use the word drone, and how do we define what these are? Chris, maybe I'll come to you first.
Okay, so for me personally, I think people are using the word drone because it's got so much coverage. It's like branding almost. So I'm from a military background, and I've worked with these things personally, and the guys on the ground. And when you have that much news coverage, for instance, if you're then producing essentially a toy and you're saying it's a drone on the box, it's for many people, for many consumers, it could be attractive just as a word, so as a branding. So I think that's a misuse of the term, because drone is actually a programmable thing, and it's not something you manually fly, so that wouldn't be a drone at all.
So from your definition, a drone is something that's programmed versus something that's just hand sort of controlled?
So it can be programmed, or it can be manually pre-programmed, and you flick a switch and then it will carry out a flight course, or it can be programmed live in flight. So there's many good examples of that, which people can get their hands on for about $1,400, so a DJI Vision or something. And it will connect with your iPhone. You can just touch on Google Maps and then it will begin flying. That is essentially a drone operation. But if you're just flying manually, that is not drone at all.
Your definition, how would you, or does the word have a negative connotation almost because of its military sort of connotations?
I think that the drone has a very negative connotation. When people talk about drone, they talk about military applications and all the stuff. For us in education at SVTD, we actually use I would call them unmanned aircrafts, unmanned vehicles, as tools for education. Right? So students know the physics, the control systems, the algorithms that underline it. I would consider what we say a drone is something that has autonomous, intelligent features that allow it to fly automatically. Right? Something that you can pilot and control by yourself. I don't think we constitute it as a drone per se.
Yeah.
And is there a responsibility for retailers perhaps with these sorts of things? I mean, obviously they're a hot item at the moment. I'm sure many people coming Christmas will be getting drones for as presents. I have a friend or two that have, they've seen them and they've gotten excited. I'm going to put a camera on it and I'm going to, film it chasing my dog and those sort of applications. But is there a responsibility for retailers to inform the buyers about these restrictions? So you had that pamphlet with you just there. Is that what's happening there?
So for this flight safe, this is actually coming from the Singapore government and CAS, the aviation authority. But with regards to manufacturers, really you could almost throw an argument out there to say car manufacturers, should they limit the cars to not be able to go over the top speed? So for instance, in the UK it's 70 miles an hour, should they be locked at that or not? And that's never been the case. So so really it should be down to education, know your laws, and be responsible personally. Like with anything else in day-to-day life, it's common sense, which seems to be getting less and less when it comes to things like this. It's easy to get carried away with, I think, on the consumer side.
And on the consumer side, there are sort of an incredible amount of uses. People use them for fun, for recreation. What are some of the instances you've seen or know that these sort of flying devices, if you like, are being used for?
Or other than film, I think one of the main areas is filming, taking videos from the sky. It's very awesome. But of course, you can also use it to support research activities. Right? We actually use it to actually possibly fly over the ocean and monitor marine life, land on the water, listen to dolphins and things like that. Or maybe you can actually fly over vegetation, monitor the nutrients, the amount of nutrients, whether you need to actually put fertilizers. This will be huge for farmers all around the region. Right? Just being waiting to uptake. So I think the difference is the drones that you buy in the store are small ones, and I think they're meant to be flying indoors. And I think there's no or little regulation needed for something. It's only when you're doing something bigger with a purpose, then I think you really need to know what you're doing. And if you're not careful, like maybe flying in a restricted area like near aerodrome, yes, I think that's kind of scary. If I'm taking an airplane and I see that, I would be.
Yeah, I'd be very concerned with that as well. But there are, again, coming back to the well-known DJI, they are putting in place downloads. So when you essentially upgrade your software, restrictions are being put into the hardware to say that it will not fly or take off at all now if you're near an aerodrome. For instance, the incident that happened in Japan or with the White House in America.
One landing on the lawn.
Yeah, I mean, with the DJI brand now, they would not be able to do that as long as the software's been updated.
So where's the line drawn then for these sorts of flying devices, these drones? Because in a place like Singapore, if we use it as a good example, it's a very built up city. It's a very busy airspace as well. Where do you draw the line between recreational use and then intruding on privacy, perhaps?
Yeah.
Shah, what are your thoughts?
So I think right now most hobbyists, when they fly, they do have some common sense when flying. There are actually pockets in Singapore where you can just fly in a flying field and it's all good. And of course there are people who want to try to take aerial shots of maybe the skyline of Singapore where they could be infringing on privacy, but I do think that's not the intent. They would probably want to take a video shot of the video. So I mean,
but intent doesn't always matter though, because I mean the intention of someone flying a flying device or a drone over an airport is for exactly that reason, to get as close to get a good shot. And the intent doesn't matter so much. It's the actual.
You just shouldn't do.
Yes, really. And where exactly should we be drawing the line?
Yeah. I personally think it would come back to people like my colleague here educating younger generations who are going to be fascinated and wowed by this. I mean, it really does come down to if you're not aware of rules and regulations, you might harmlessly go and do something you shouldn't. So more things like the flight safe sort of support from the government is what we need, and then they'll hopefully start approaching universities and companies like my own to train them or to educate them and to work with them.
You can almost see there being like an ethics of flying devices course being rolled out.
Yeah, we do. In the SVTD, we actually run aero design workshops. So for students who polytechnics and engineering college to come to our university, and we teach them within less than a week about the basics of drones as well as safety aspects. So when they do fly outside, they actually know what everything.
Does it go hand in hand with punishments though? I mean, education is one thing, but
yeah.
Do punishments need to be severe enough to actually, be a deterrent so people are paying attention to these things?
I guess in a way you could sort of put that to, if you punish someone too severely, does that then start to be scaremongering? Or do you want to develop this with the people's support because of the benefits of it? For instance, last year I actually helped to find Gareth Huntley, who went missing in Tioman. And if I didn't have that piece of equipment to do that, we wouldn't have been able to have found him in the 12 hours we did after the 7 days that passed with the manual searching. So there's things like this where we need to really get regulation and education to speed things up on the correct way of doing things before people do things wrong.
I think there's a good balance between regulation and education.
Yeah.
I think that will give us the way we need to do.
And you think just in the case in Singapore that we're moving at the right speed, or do you think like the technology and the availability of these things is moving faster than the regulations to govern them?
I think that recently the regulations slightly changed. I do think it's going towards a good direction. I mean, there's more information now. There's flyers going out. I think everybody has seen it, and everybody understands the dangers of it. And I think the most common is flying near the aerodrome. I think that's really dangerous. But up to now, I think we have not seen anything. I think everybody's have some common sense not to do something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Chris Armstrong. Thank you as well for joining us. And Dr. Fung will be staying with us for the second half of the show, and we'll be discussing the technological future of drones. Back in a moment.